Where are you based?
I'm in British Columbia, man. Where are you?
I'm in Belgium.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a little bit of a difference. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed.
What time is it there right now?
It's 6 p.m.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, it's not a lot of difference, I guess.
It's 9 a.m. here. So
Then, yeah, you just
yeah,
started.
yeah. It's yeah, I mean West Coast of Canada, right? So it's yeah. I think I like to the UK, I'm 8 hours, I
Yeah.
believe. Eight
Well,
hours behind.
we are 9 hours in that
Yeah.
perspective. UK is 1 hour earlier.
Yeah, right on. Have you always lived there?
Yeah, yeah. I've been living here for the past 7, 8 years now. So,
Okay, right on.
yeah, yeah.
Very cool. It's a good place. I like it.
Yeah, you've been here before?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I spent a lot of time. My family's Italian, and like most of my family still lives in Italy.
Ah,
So before my child was born, we were there a lot. So I spent a lot of time all over Europe. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's perhaps not the right time though, but it's
No, I would say now is definitely not the right time to go. Yeah, we're nice and safe, and hanging out here in the west coast of Canada, and it's life is good.
yeah, we also would like to think so. We I think it's I think tomorrow I'm going to Amsterdam, right? After I think 1 hour or 1 year already, like I've not been to anywhere.
Oh,
Tomorrow I would give it a go, right? So
hmm
yeah, traveling
I
down.
know. I talked to a gal in Australia a few days ago. She's one of the LPs, like in one of our investors, and I'm like, I don't think I've heard a foreign accent in a year. Like, I haven't talked to somebody from another culture in a year. Like, it'd been so long, and I'm like, it's nice to hear another accent, not just
Yeah,
Canadian. You
yeah,
know? Yeah, it's so true. I know, man. I know. I mean, starting like here in North America, it's definitely starting to feel like things are returning to normal ish,
yeah,
right? Although Ontario just in Canada just locked down again. I
yeah.
don't know what they're doing. Um, but yeah, we've been super lucky here. Like in BC, like on the West Coast, our population is not as big. Like we're 5 million people in the entire province,
Yeah.
and like where I live, there's only 150,000 people,
Ah,
and it's like wide open space. Like
yeah,
we live in the mountains.
yeah,
So COVID has not really had a good chance of like spreading too fast here.
yeah.
We're not as dense.
Yeah, you're lucky in that perspective. But
Totally.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the place that I live in, it's very small, compared
Yes.
to where you live in. And then we have about 11 million population. So,
Right.
based on the size of the land, I think the
Oh yeah.
population
British Columbia, I think compared to Belgium is like,
maybe 20 times.
yeah, BC, just the province of BC compared to Belgium. I'm actually like, I'm curious. I want to know how big it is. Because
Yeah,
I guarantee you it is like we have so much land, it's obscene. Now,
yeah,
most of it's not livable. It's like
yeah,
backcountry
yeah.
mountain land.
I think we are, if I'm not mistaken, I think we are about 50 to 60,000 square kilometers or something, if I'm not mistaken, right? So,
Oh God.
yeah, it's very small,
Yeah,
so
that's small.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Size of BC landmass. Here, I'll tell
yeah.
you what it is. 944,000 square
Yeah, so
kilometers.
so you guys easily win.
Yeah,
Easily, quite
it's
easily.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a very like, it's like the north of British Columbia, nobody lives up there. Like Canada is a country where I think years ago, it was like 90% of our population lives within 100 miles of the US border.
wow,
So
wow,
like we have this huge country, and then all of us are kind of clustered along the US border. And most of that just comes down to weather. Like
yeah,
where I am, it's really nice here. Like we're almost a desert climate. Like I live in a valley in the mountains, and it's Canada's only desert climate. So it's like dry and hot most of the summer. Well, actually, all summer it's super hot. It's like Arizona hot.
hmm.
And then our winters are dry and pretty mild. Like we don't get that like stereotype Canadian winter.
Ooh.
Not really. Like I barely get any snow where I live.
Like for us, it's I'm sure you are aware of the weather here. I
Oh
think
yeah.
next week I think we'll get the snow fall again. Like after almost, being, experiencing this 25 degrees, I think yesterday, or
Sure.
now we are going back to getting snow next week, I think. So
Dude, that wasn't normal growing up. Like when I was a kid, I grew up in Northern Ontario, which is like north in Canada.
yeah,
And like, I don't remember weather being that erratic.
yeah,
Like snow, like after, like once snow was done, it was done.
yeah,
Like the systems were pretty predictable every year. Like we knew when it was winter and we knew when it was summer. And now, like you just never know. It's like you could get a hailstorm in June.
yeah,
It's weird.
yeah.
Like,
I think it's the different time that we were raised, I guess. It's a different time, and maybe,
totally.
yeah, I think, when I have to explain this particular challenge to my daughter, I struggle to explain that, and how stable the climate used to be in the past. I
Totally.
cannot do that. I cannot do that.
No, it's really hard to do. I know I've got a 5-year-old daughter too. And it's like, yeah, I try to tell her like the weather was never like this before.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, if it was, like June was June, July was July, it was like pretty stable. We're lucky here. We don't get like the erratic storms that they do in the States. Like in the most of my friends are American, and like they get weird ass storms. Like the coastal shit that comes in for them is just insane.
Yeah.
And we don't get that. Like Canada gets winter, and that's our penance.
Mhm.
Like, we don't get any tornadoes. There's no floods. There's no hurricanes. Like there's none of the other crap, but like we do get winter.
Yeah.
So it's, half dozen one or the other, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that perspective, your climate is very close to, parts of Spain, I guess, right? It's
I would say parts of Spain, like Canada itself would be like way closer to, I wouldn't say it's warmer than the Nordics. I would I don't know. Like I would say it's very close to like a lot of European climate, like Central Europe.
Okay.
Whatever that is. That would be like France, Germany, like in there.
Us.
Right. Similar to there. You guys like it's not as cold. We're not as north as like Sweden. I used to live there for a year. So like it's not as north as there. So like our hours are different, and but like where I live in particular, definitely warmer.
Yeah.
Like the west coast of Canada is kind of like the west coast of the US. It's just this coastal, very temperate. It's nice. Like it's never super cold. It doesn't usually get super hot, except like for 2 months a year here. It feels like you're living in a frying pan, which is fine. It's nice. We have lakes.
Yeah. I lived in India for quite a while. I'm originally from Nepal.
Okay.
So yeah, and then I lived in India for some years, and there I experienced like 50-degree centigrade, right? So it's
that's insane.
That's insane, right?
We don't get that high. We get to like 40.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you are in a train, and then you don't want to wear anything, like literally nothing, So
I know. We just float in the water, man. When it's 40 degrees, like everybody here just goes to the lake and just floats in the lake.
Okay, so maybe let's look into your company, Pela, if I pronounce well.
Pela, whatever. Yeah.
Pela, okay. I'll stick to Pela. You corrected.
Sure.
You corrected.
If you were Spanish, it would be Pela. Like most Americans would say Pela. Yeah.
So how did this started? Like, what's the motivation beneath that?
Yeah. So Jeremy, who is the founder of the company, he's my business partner. There's 3 of us, Brad, Jeremy, and myself. He started it, I want to say 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I actually lose track of time right now because it's been a while. And I started investing in the company about 4.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So as like the first outside kind of like investor in the business. He started it purely because like he was an environmental consultant. Like he did a lot of work with cleanups. So like in Canada, we have a ton of oil fields and a lot of mining and resource, right? And he was like, his job was like his day job pre-Pela was a lot of like consulting on cleanup, right? So like disasters, or mitigation, that kind of work. So for him, it was like, it started with let's just find a solution to all this plastic waste, right? Like he was literally, like the story goes, like he was on a beach in Hawaii with his family and his kid was digging up plastic on the beach. So for him, it was like, why is there, like, then he started digging around and he found out about the gyre and the Pacific Ocean and how much waste is actually around. And that the fact that like every piece of plastic ever made is still here today. So it was all like, it was very personal at the beginning. I would say for him, it still is. You know, for me, it's like very much a passion thing. Like I'm an outdoor enthusiast. You know, Pela is my second company. I sold my first one. And this is all about like with this business, can we do something, you know, significantly impactful for the world? Right. So I've only been in this for 4.5 years. And it kind of like when I started investing, that was pre-revenue in the company. And then we started like really putting dollars and time into like better material science, better manufacturing technology. Like how can we make product out of materials that nobody else has really used yet has been the challenge. It's like we're early in the adoption of the stuff that we work with.
So you know, maybe try to explain me, because what I'm trying to get to is like, you know, to have an idea is one thing, right? So you got an idea, and then I'm sure there are phases, right? You are like, okay.
Oh yeah, man. You basically hack for a long time. Like,
yeah, exactly. Right.
You know, Jeremy had an idea and he spent 5 years in a machine shop trying to find plant-based materials that he could then turn around and compost. There was years and years and years of like trying to find the right mix of material. Like what kind, like, yeah, says that's all it is. So when you're making physical things, right? Like if you're making software, that's one thing. It's a highly iterative process. Like I'm a software developer by trade. So like I know how to make software. When you're making physical things, it's slower.
Yeah.
Right. It is more science. It's more trial and error. You know, like you don't set out with like, you know, you're not building something and then just like modifying it slightly. You're often building things and throwing them away entirely. Right. So like we have all of the old first models of our original phone case. Like we have them all in our office and they were awful. Like those first versions were terrible. But you have to start there, especially if you're going to make something really innovative, I think.
Yeah, and why phone case? You know, it's interesting because I'm sure there was a conscious decision to that, right?
Totally. Yeah, phone case is like, okay, so the way we think about waste right now, everybody, if you talk about plastic, most people think about water bottles, straws, you know, disposable packaging, like food packaging. They think a lot around single use. The problem with where current material science is, so let's call them like bioplastics, right? The good ones. There's a lot of bad bioplastics, but like really good biodegradable, compostable plastics is they're expensive, which means you can't just go and make disposable water bottles out of the same material that our phone case is. So we chose a phone case as the place to start because it was a product that there's billions of made every year. And they only ever get used for like, you know, 1 year to 5 years tops. And then they're thrown away because people upgrade their phones like every 2 to 3 years, 4 years. So it was this sort of like, we call it middle use life type product. And there's lots of that in your life and in my life. You know, then we went after sunglasses, after phone cases, and like blue light glasses. And now we're looking at things that are made from fabrics. So like bags would be a good one. You know, where like you buy them, you use them for some period of time, and then they end up going to landfill. So that was the category of product that we liked because you know, it's not this super cheap commodity thing. It's kind of the same thinking. If I could give you a really easy comparable, it's why when Elon Musk started Tesla, he started selling a $250,000 a year Roadster, right? And then that paid for the $100,000 a year Model S or $100,000 Model S. And then that paid for the release of the Model 3, which is now like a $40,000 car. So you have to start with the thing that lets you build the business. And phone cases were obvious. Like it was that perfect, okay, they're all made of plastic. They all get thrown away. Guaranteed they all get thrown away.
Mhm.
Let's go there. And there's other products like that too.
Mhm. Mhm. And I want to take you back into the creation part again, because I'm kind of curious about this particular industry,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of talk about it, right? So we talk about Paris Accord
The
and
climate cord. Yep.
yeah, and whatnot all the year round. But
Yeah.
and then we say, oh, we want to be 100% green energy by 2059 or something. I'm just
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
up a number
Everybody's
right now.
picking numbers out in the future. Yeah.
And we don't see a clear path there, right? So we don't see a clear
No.
path. Like, how do you actually get there, right? We see new vehicle coming up, this big giant companies creating those vehicles every single day, new model coming up,
Yeah.
enticing users like us, every single day.
Sure.
It doesn't stop there.
No. Look, I mean, the subject of climate is a tricky one.
Yeah.
Like I think it's become so black and white polarized that I do believe that we've lost the ability to even just have reasonable conversation over how we're going to get to some of these goals. Because the reality of all of it is this is not like one problem that is being solved. It's being sold as one problem, like we must solve climate change. But if you unpack it, it's so much more than just energy, right? We are trying to solve, like, climate change is the big kind of like, okay, there's this looming thing out in the future that a lot of us are worried about, like talk 30, 40, 50 years out, maybe more. And that the reality is we don't 100% know. So what's happened is it's become this polarizing thing because we're trying to simplify it down into like one problem. And really, it's actually 100 different little problems all stacking up against us. Right. And energy. So, like, transportation energy is one form of energy. That's definitely an issue that's currently getting the most press. Thank you, Elon. But then how we plug in is another form of energy. Right. So, like, right now we're talking on technology, like that uses power. Where's all that power coming from? So how we plug in is another thing. There's agriculture, there's waste, there's just so many components to this. So there's a bunch of really good books on, how to think about climate. Like Bill Gates just came out with I think is a great book because he does a very good job of chunking this down into like, here are the big buckets that we can talk about. And he also, what I love about what he did was he's talking about the economic cost. So like, what's it really going to cost society to do this stuff? Because you can't just like hard switch like the activists want like oil to go away tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's insane. Like, that's reasonably insane to say that. Like, you're basically going to crush millions of people's jobs, like everything, their livelihoods. You're going to create more poverty than you would actually solve climate change. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, so I think the ability to have reasonable conversation is where this all has to start. Yeah. Like, let's be practical. Let's look at this. Like, okay, so if we need to do this step by step, how are we doing it? Now, I also don't believe that, like, let me counter that statement with, I don't think companies are doing enough. And I think business is being largely lazy. Mm-hmm. Right. There's accountability issues. Like, public companies have incentives to do nothing. If like they make more profit, they don't really care about planet. So I think it's a big gnarly ball. And, when you bring up the Paris Climate Accord or like the goals that we have, it's the place that everybody goes to, which is like, how the hell are we going to get there? And I'm like, well, I believe that technology will help us.
Yeah.
Like, that's what people are good at, is we're good, creative beings. And we'll get there.
Let's see. This particular industry, like you said, it has some attention now. We are talking about it. At least there is a debate there going on. And based on this, like, how difficult is to convince investors? Like, I'm sure there is challenges, right? Because
Sure.
investors want to make money, and
Yeah,
then
man.
you
That's
have
their
to,
job.
and like you said, like you said, you invested on this one
Yeah.
at the beginning. So I'm sure, after that as well, you had to raise investment or find out more money.
Yep.
And it's not an easy thing to sell. It's not an easy thing to sell.
No, I think, I mean, look, the great thing is ESG. So like environment, social governance type investing
Mm-hmm.
is getting very, very big, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of momentum now for this style of investment. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was almost none. We took our first institutional round of investment, I want to say about a little under 2 years ago. And that was from Marcy Venture Partners and Kensington Capital. They were the two. Marcy is Jay-Z, Jay Brown, Larry Marcus, that trio. For them, it was surprisingly not a difficult pitch. But that was 2 years ago. And, because for Jay Brown and Jay-Z and Larry, like their whole thesis for their fund is like, where is culture going?
Mm-hmm.
They want to be in culturally relevant companies over time. So we showed up and said, like, look, this is where we think the world is going. And they agreed, right? Is that like people are going to right now buying more sustainable product, driving a better car, outfitting your house with smart technology to make it more efficient. That is new and novel, but there is a point in the future where that's normal. Like where like you don't have a choice but to buy a very energy efficient light bulb because that's all they sell.
Yeah.
Right. Or, a smart thermostat. There won't be the dumb old ones anymore at some point in the future. So I think, raising money for this stuff right now is getting infinitely easier every year. That said, there's also a lot of crap. Like it's like anything else, there's just a lot of really bad investments in the climate and sustainability space that are getting money simply because there's lots of it available. Right. And, and I guess like, I don't know if I'm pro or I'm for or against that. I like the idea that people are trying lots of stuff. I think that's needed. I think lots of it's not going to work, but who cares? They're trying.
No.
And I think there's a lot to be said about like how great it is that there's enough entrepreneurs out there now that they're trying.
Yeah. At least they are not wasting on creating weapons or something like that, right?
Right. Like how much stupid crap has been, invested in the past where you're like, God, really? Do we need another gun? Like, or something else? Like, do we really? Yeah. Like how many more bombs does the world need?
Exactly.
Like we can blow our planet to hell and high water. Like how many times?
Yeah.
So it is great to see. And look at the size of the funds that are also participating. Like these are big money managers that are starting to put capital into ESG, which is really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe explain me the material that you if you can, to maybe explain like how did you settle for that?
How do we find it?
No, I mean, you said like you tried a few different
materials,
right? So at the end you settled for one, and what was that selection process like how did you end up choosing that particular material?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
it's a really great question. Okay, so our thesis for the entire Pela group of businesses, right, because we're a house of brands, is like everything we make has to have what we call a graceful end of life. Right? So
what do you mean?
Our thesis is design waste out of the product from the beginning. So we don't really like materials that are hard to dispose of, which is why we dislike traditional plastic. Because traditional plastic, the story there is, oh, but it's recyclable. And I just call bullshit. Like, no, it's not. Like, yes, it is, but like, there's so many problems with recycling. There's a reason why it's broken globally, right? Is like most of it's human behavior. So for us, we want to design and use materials that are easy for people to dispose of and that won't be on the planet forever. So that our gold standard is, can you use a material that is backyard home compostable? And then at the same time, can that backyard home compostable material degrade in a landfill in a reasonable amount of time? And I define reasonable as like less than 5 years. Because most plastics right now, we actually don't know how long they're going to take. Like we think it's like 500 years, So when I get asked, it's like, is yours better? I'm like, yeah, it's not forever.
Yeah.
Like the bar was forever. And, our phone case in a landfill will be gone in a couple of years. And our phone case in a backyard compost will be gone in a couple of months. Mm-hmm. So that's this, like we set a really high bar for ourselves. And that everything we do has to have a graceful end of life, and sometimes that's just not possible. Like there's a reason why we are not in every single product out there. We can't, the technology is just not there yet. But we believe it will be like that. I'm very firm there now.
I was just wondering on that part because I'm sure you tried out a few different things before you end up using that, right? So that's where the question is coming from, because
yeah, it's like how many,
it's about trial and error, right? So
it is. Yeah. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of materials companies out there now that have all manner of types of like I call them like drop-ins or replacement plastics. Like if we're just talking plastic, and that's a big category of stuff, like even think of like synthetics in clothing, that's still plastic. Yeah. There's a lot of really cool material science out in the world now, and it depends on where those resins are coming from. Like some of them come from corn, some of them are hemp based. Like there's so many avenues to derive like the base compounds that make these materials. And not all of them are biodegradable. That's the other thing. Like just because you make a plastic alternative out of plants doesn't actually mean that it has a graceful end of life. And that's the difference for us. I don't want to make something out of sugarcane if it's still going to be here forever. Mm-hmm. Like just because yes, you helped solve the beginning of life of that product, right? But what about the end of life? Like we have a waste problem. Mm-hmm. We have an energy and a carbon issue, but we also have a waste problem. The way I explain this to my team, because we get asked like, why focus on waste and not carbon or not energy or anything else? And I'm like, well, for me, it's simple. Like if you were to go in the future and we were to have a completely zero carbon world and it was a trash pile, a zero carbon trash pile is still a trash pile. I don't want to live there. It'd be the cleanest air there is. But if it's all garbage, I don't care.
You mentioned like, you did one, I'll change the topic a little bit because I was curious a little bit about your background. You said like you had one more company before this, also have a software development background. Right?
Yeah.
So maybe explain me like, what was the transition like you, just coming into this particular segment, right? Being into the technical, core technical, I would say, because I understand the field a little bit myself. So,
sure. Yeah.
So because of my also background into software engineering. So
yeah.
So how was the transition like for you? Like I'm sure everything was new to you.
Okay. So, I mean, the nice thing is I don't need to be an expert in the material science. Like I have material scientists on staff, and, my business partner, Jeremy, is like really good at it. Yeah. So my focus is actually still very, it's data software, right? And marketing, which is mostly data now. So my previous company, this was a company called Demac Media, and we were about 100 people. Professional services company. We did a lot of work early on, designing and building like early days e-commerce sites, like websites, to put it simply, and all the software and infrastructure to connect those things, like talking 12, 15 years ago. And then I sold it a little over 3 years ago to a private equity group that was like rolling up 4 or 5 of them, like us. And so that company is now called Bounteous. It's quite successful. It's like they do tons of work. They're the ones that built the Domino's pizza e-commerce thing. So, I mostly employed other software developers and designers, and then think about like data integration, that kind of work. Not glamorous, like nothing was very pretty, but it was really good. It was good business. So for Pela, I focus mostly on like driving the business forward. right? And we are largely a direct consumer company. Like we have a little under 1 million consumers that have bought from us in 3.5 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, about 3.5 years. All that is direct, so like I still have a development team in Pela. There's 5 of them. We've got a pretty big marketing team, which is all around creative and testing. And, it's still like really close to the world I'm comfortable in, which is bits and bytes. Right. And then there's this like other machine, that is operations and supply chain and material science, and all of that exists too. But the piece of the business I focus on is still super digital. Like that's where I'm really comfortable.
And being an entrepreneur, this is something is my go-to question. I would say a lot of time I ask this because I just want to know like what this person is all about, right? So
Sure.
so entrepreneurship is not a fun ride on its own, right?
No, it's awful.
Why would you want to plunge in this journey in like what's that drive like? Why when you wake up like this is something that I want to do, like how do you get to that point?
Okay, I've been an entrepreneur now for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 15 years. So I don't even remember. I have a hard time remembering like what was the impetus to like even jump in. And like, I worked for a company called NetSuite before I started my first company.
Mm-hmm.
And NetSuite's now like was public. It was acquired by Oracle. Like it was a really successful early SaaS company in accounting. Right. A lot of people that'll listen to this will probably know what NetSuite is. It was like NetSuite and Salesforce.com started at the same time. Yep. So that I only bring that up because like that was a really great job. Mm-hmm. Like stock options, like everything. It was a great job. And I was early. And I still left to start my company. I grew up in a family of business owners. So like my mom was a business owner, small business owner. My grandparents were small business owners. So like I grew up where it was like really normal. They owned retail stores. So it wasn't glamorous business ownership, but it was still like they were self-employed. So for me, it wasn't like, okay, why would you go do this? And this is so weird. It was actually pretty normal. I don't remember the actual like, oh, this is why I should go do this, like this exact thing. I don't remember that. It was too long ago. Yeah. Now though, it's just, I love the creativity that you get to play with. And I like the idea of like being able to time travel, so like with Pela, I get to go in the future and kind of like see what the world I want to create and then use this machine that is this company to go and make that future possible. So I think it's more like I'm a creative. I like to play there, and this is the best possible outlet for me. I also just believe in having some purpose, man. Like, to be honest, like being an entrepreneur, it's a crappy ride most of the time, but you also have a great sense of purpose. And that's at least for me. It's different for other people, but like it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are similar traits, right? Like if I listen to 10 different entrepreneurs, perhaps
totally
they will say similar kind of stories. Some of them maybe, say something different, but it has a similar flavor, whatever.
Yeah.
You say.
Yeah. Like a lot of my entrepreneur friends, like they're very driven. So it's all about like which mountain can they climb next?
Yeah.
Like it's how big and how fast and all that stuff. And I definitely used to be that way. I think I'm almost 40, so I'm getting older. And
you are younger than me, by the way. You are younger than me.
Still young, yeah. Still feel young. That's the important thing. It's less about like which mountain can I climb, and now it is more, it is more impact and purpose. I think and it used to be about like how big and how much. Like, this is fun. I wonder how far I could push this. Mm-hmm. I asked myself that a lot in like my late 20s and early 30s. Mm-hmm. And now it's more like, how far can we push this? But, we're doing a lot of good in the world. So, can we actually do more? Can we change the world? Can we actually, I know it sounds cheesy and cliche, but like, can I actually create a world where there is no waste?
Yeah.
That sounds freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in building an app or a piece of software that's just for a bunch of rich people in California.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't at all do it for me. You can make a lot of money doing that, but it doesn't do anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really like when I say it's about purpose, I genuinely mean it.
Right. And as far as the production that you are doing right now about the cases, where do you
Yeah.
do that? Is it all in the US, or like where do you do
No.
it?
So most of our cases are actually made here in Canada,
Yeah.
like right here in British Columbia. Like I'm in the Okanagan Valley, and we have a facility here where we still like we make. Oh man, we make a lot of phone cases here. Um, and we also have a manufacturing facility, and I have a team in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So we do some manufacturing in China, not a ton. Like if we get a large retail order, right, where I need to make like 50,000 phone cases in a week,
Mm-hmm.
that's where China is just better than anybody else on the planet. Like they can replicate something very, very fast. Here it's like our direct consumer business, which is like 90% of our business. Most of those cases actually get made here in Kelowna. And there's a team here that does it.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked you is because of the present challenge, right? There must be a pretty steep challenge for manufacturing products like yours,
Yep.
where you have to import from Far East, so there must
Oh
be.
yeah. I mean, even just the carbon footprint of transportation, right? So
Yeah.
like the vast majority of our business is in Canada and the US. So we keep manufacturing here, even though it is slightly more expensive. We still keep it here because it's a lower overall transportation cost, much lower carbon footprint, and we can go faster. So like the nimbleness of not having to put things on, large ocean freight or flying them by plane. It's simpler.
Mhm.
There's definitely the local impact part of it. So like if I want to try out something, like, hey, Jeremy comes to me and it's like, we got a new material, let's try it out. If we were to go to China and do that, our experience is they don't like to try things. They like to scale things and replicate things, right? Here, the men and women that work in our facility, they're like, yeah, we'll try anything. Like they're very curious and they're experimental. So, being a company that's really focused on innovation, it helps a lot to have our own, studio, our own manufacturing facility right here. Like we can be super nimble. If we learn something, we can put it into action in days and weeks instead of months and years.
And as far as the different product line are concerned, like you mentioned, like you were trying out different product line.
Yep.
What are some of the new stuff that you are working that are not there yet on your website or anywhere?
Yeah, I mean the next big one that's about to launch. So it depends on when you air this, but the next big one is we've developed a machine called Lomi.
Lomi.
So Lomi. Yep.
Lomi, okay.
You can go to meetlomi.com and that's what it is. So it's a new kind of machine where, yeah, I mean, the best way to put it is like it's a small kitchen appliance that sits on your counter and it turns your food scraps, like food waste, into dirt overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it, like plant it. And the thing that's really crazy about Lomi is it also eats bioplastics. So like our phone cases, these things I'm holding up in a little AirPods case,
Yeah.
It'll eat a lot of materials like compostable straws, cups, plates and cutlery. Like there's just, coffee pods that are compostable. So what we've done is said, we're great at making these products, but where the world really needs help is in waste. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we're not a product company. Like we're a waste company. Like we care about waste and recycling facilities and compost facilities. And in Europe, Europe's actually really good on the compost side. They don't like biodegradable plastics, because they take longer to break down and they can't turn them into money as fast as they'd like to, like they can with food. So we're like, okay, well, can you take waste management and do what Tesla did with charging and just distribute it into people's houses? right? So we've developed this machine, and it's a lot of technology that goes into Lomi. There's a bunch of patents that we filed around it because it's really cool. Like it's gonna. I think every house is gonna have one, just like every house has a dishwasher.
Yeah.
And it'll just fit into your everyday life. Like when you're done cooking dinner, you just scrape your plate into Lomi and you put your plate in your dishwasher and you start Lomi in your dishwasher before you go to bed. And the next morning, instead of food waste in your garbage or in your compost, you actually just have dirt that you can use throw it anywhere. Like you can throw it in the trash, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty awesome piece of technology. And then I think you're going to see us come out with just more everyday products. And we're just going to get rid of the everyday waste. I'm really interested right now in bags, like just everyday bags, backpacks, sling bags, purses, wallets. Again, those are products that like everybody buys tons of, and they go away.
I have like my wife has like over, I don't know, 20 bags or something like, and
really common. Right. And this is it because it's fashion. So like we are just super into that type of product where like people buy a lot of it. It's super wasteful. It doesn't get talked about much. But if we can make things that are like, if I could make a backpack right now that was 98% less waste than a regular one, I would take that. That's a win. So first up is Lomi. Then we're going to make a whole bunch of stuff that works with Lomi.
Yeah. And how big is Lomi? Do you already have a prototype that you can demonstrate?
Oh yeah, no, I have like working units. I'm in my house right now, but I have working units at the office. Like it's real. Okay. Yeah, we're launching a crowdfunding campaign to scale up manufacturing only. So like it's a very real product. We just need to like build supply chain. Making appliances turns out is very expensive. So it's a little different than a phone case.
It would be interesting to see that, you demonstrating that,
Oh yeah. We have, I'll send you some stuff. So April 20th, we launched this thing, and I'm actually going to do a live stream on April 20th on YouTube of us composting something. Okay. Like real time. It's going to be like watching paint dry because that's not exactly the fastest process. But it works, and it's pretty innovative stuff.
Yeah. I would definitely have a look at it and
oh yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, because it sounds very interesting, like what you're saying. Yeah.
It's anybody who deals with garbage in the house is gonna love Lomi. I take our garbage out, and I hate food so much.
It smells so bad. Like
it smells awful, and like those little green bins that you got to keep your food in under the kitchen sink. I'm like, I just never want to deal with that again.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the thing that I think, like what we think a ton about at Pela is how do you make product, right? Or service that to people is better than how they currently do something. And then can you make a product or a service that is not only better than the way that somebody currently does something, but is better for the planet at the same time?
Yeah.
So that people are buying it because it's good for them. And it's, because human beings are very selfish and we're very emotional, and that's how we do things. It's like, is this convenient, especially in the Western world? But if I can somehow like give you something that is great for you and happens to be great for the planet, then it doesn't feel so much like you're being asked to sacrifice. Like there's no taxes involved. Like it's easier. That's just how we think about the social impact part.
And how did you get the idea of Lomi? How? I mean, this is something that you're doing with Pela. At the same time, now you got this idea of Lomi. I'm sure now there's again a thought process there. It didn't come overnight. So tell me.
No, it was like 3 years ago. So Pela, like the parent company, Pela Labs, right? Yeah. So there's Pela Case, there's Pela Vision, there's Habitat. We've got all these brands that Pela Labs has released. So Lomi is just another product released by Pela Labs. There was like 2.5, 3 years ago, we had a leadership team meeting, a regular leadership team meeting. And we just started talking about how difficult it is to get commercial compost facilities to take our product. Right. And at that time, I don't know why it came up at that time. I can't remember that detail,
Okay.
but it definitely came up. And what we realized was like really big companies around the world, they're limited from rolling out bioplastics. So think of like Unilever or Procter and Gamble, like these massive companies that make billions.
Yep.
They don't adopt these materials because there's no infrastructure for them. So we started down this path of how do you solve for global waste management infrastructure and do it in a way that doesn't take 50 years. And then I, at that time, I was just reading something about the supercharger network from Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And I own a Tesla, and I just put a charger in my house when I moved to Kelowna. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it needs to be that easy. Like I need to be able to like buy one, put it in my kitchen, or put it somewhere in the house. It wasn't that clear yet. And I'm like, we need something in the home that lets people dispose of these materials really easily. Right. So you take out the transportation of waste, you get rid of all that stuff and just make it hyper local and distributed. And then we set on the path that led to Lomi. Mm-hmm. So it's been a lot of time and money invested in building Lomi.
Mm-hmm. And maybe if you can talk about the engineering side of Lomi, how did this, like, the bits and pieces came together, or the design itself came together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so I've got my material science team led this.
Yeah.
Right. So it was, it's funny, like we actually didn't look at it. This is probably like entirely ignorant, but we didn't look at it like an engineering issue. We looked at it as a materials science. Mm-hmm. So we actually approached it from, how do you take a compost, like a backyard or a commercial compost, and make it small and faster? Mm-hmm. So we approached it from composting is this process that takes months, right? And can you take that 6 months to like make compost in a traditional way? And can you kickstart it so that the whole thing only took weeks? Mm-hmm. Right. So the process was actually more about recreating the compost environment inside without the smell. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, can you drop the smell down to like almost zero, and low power usage and fast? So like call it overnight and or 2 or 3 days to get the long process of composting, which is 6 months. Can you really drop it down to, a few weeks? Uh-huh. The engineering, like the actual design of the machine and the engineering came after. Like once we figured out that, okay, it's possible, like here are the elements you need, you need oxygen, you need water to be available. So like usually that comes from food, right? There's lots of moisture in water. You need heat, and not so much heat that you kill all the microorganisms that make for good compost. Like you need bacteria to live to make compost. You can't just dehydrate food. Like there's other devices that dehydrate food. And I'm like, oh God, why? Like It's convenient, but it's not good. So the design and engineering then came in, like once we realized like, okay, you can do this, there was a lot of challenges with the machine. And I can't give you like super bits of detail because there's patents pending on some of this stuff, but airflow was a big one. Like how you got air in and out of that machine, because that's what a compost is. Like it's an air, like landfills are anaerobic, right? There's no air or oxygen in a landfill, which is why things take so damn long to degrade in them. Most things. And then compost is aerobic. There's oxygen, which is part of the process. So a sealed machine is exactly the thing that is good for oxygen. Like, so yeah, it came down to a lot of work on airflow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And is it only bio products, or it could also do, I don't know, other forms of, materials like, maybe papers or, I don't know, cartoons or something?
You could definitely do paper.
Yeah.
Wouldn't recommend it. And the reason for that is just that paper is actually one of those materials that's really easy to recycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paper and steel, like recycling gets a bad rap. I'm often one of the people that bags on recycling pretty hard. But I usually am focused on plastic. There's too many types of plastics. It's difficult for people to understand how it works. And then a lot of them actually just can't be recycled. So, plastic is nasty. It's a great material when used properly. It's really bad when it's misused. So you could put paper in Lomi. I just wouldn't. I would tell you, like, recycle paper, recycle cardboard. It can be used again. But we've tested all of our packaging. We have a personal care company called Habitat, Habitat by Pela, and it has like little cardboard, tubes that like the deodorant come in. Like it's just a simple cardboard paper tube. Well, it goes away in Lomi, right? But it could also be really easily recycled. So it's, optionality is fine, but I would definitely tell people, like, you should still recycle paper.
Yeah. Because the thing is, people will end up throwing things into Lomi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
Because
we're going to really work on the user experience side.
Yeah.
So like making it like really easy, to understand what can or cannot go in Lomi. Right now it's, most people are going to use it for just everyday food waste.
Yeah.
Like that's the big usage. Let's turn food waste into a thing of the past. And then over the years, we will introduce, like, here are the products that also work in Lomi. There's a whole bunch on day one. Like, we're going to have a big list of, like, here's everything that will go into Lomi just fine. Like this brand, this product, and we'll just make it easy.
Yeah. Because most of the food wrap are used, here, at least in the European region, like you use paper for that.
Yep.
And when you want to throw everything, you just throw everything into the bin, right? So
yeah, and you can. So like those compostable food containers, those actually could go in Lomi for sure. Yeah. Those are typically like a really low grade, like paper type material. Like you could cut that up and put it in Lomi just fine. Yeah, that'll be an example of, like, these types of, and these brands. There's a handful of companies that make those to go containers.
Right. Matt, what's the future?
Waste free, hopefully. Hopefully. Yeah, that's the short answer, man. I think what's coming next is just more innovation.
Yeah. Especially for the future of Pela, in terms of growth, in terms of, I don't know. You may have seen the future, already by now, like, okay, this is where you want to be in, 2-3 years, 5 years time. And this is what your exit would look like. I don't know,
sure.
If you are already thinking about that.
All the time. Yeah. We are a venture-backed company, right? So we have investors. I'm one of them. So like, we're still a business, and we're a good business. And that's the point, is like, we want to use business for good. And that means you got to be a good business first.
Yeah.
So for us, it is just right now, like, our goal is to get to 1 billion pounds of waste stopped every year. Right. That means we have to build a pretty big company to do that. But that's the measurable goal is, can we stop 1 billion pounds of waste, plastic, whatever, every year from ever being made? And, that's the current future. Once we get there, I don't know what's beyond that, but that is like the thing that we think about every day, every week. That's what we obsess over. And by doing that, that'll mean you build a big business. And by building a big, valuable business, there will be opportunities for return on investment. Whatever those look like, we don't know. There's tons of optionality. I'm not super worried about the details.
And where are you now in terms of getting that goal? Like, maybe you are at 100 million, or maybe you are already 50.
No, God, we're not even close. Like, we've stopped about 48 million plastic bags worth of plastic. So it's getting there. I think, Lomi is going to stop a lot very, very fast, right? Because it's daily waste, right? Instead of like a phone case is a, once every couple of years type of waste thing that we're stopping. So increasing frequency of like waste stoppage, I don't have a better way to say that yet, is sort of the goal with Lomi. Like, let's make this faster and more frequent and make the impact better. So I still think we have like an immense amount of work. The billion target, like 1 billion pounds, was our, like, let's set something that just sounds insane.
No, I think with the application of Lomi, perhaps you would get that much faster, because you in your kitchen itself, you will have at least 8 to 10 pounds of plastic every single day.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Waste, think of food waste. Yeah, you're gonna have like pounds and pounds of it every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, if you could put 10 million Lomis in the world,
Yeah.
It's pretty impactful. Like 10 million lomies would be the equivalent, even on the carbon capture side. 10 million lomies would basically be doing the work of about 100 million mature trees.
That's
So
interesting.
it's impactful.
All right, Matt. Thank you. Thank you for, sharing this wonderful information. You're doing quite a good job. At first, we still have to, find out more entrepreneurs, into this sector.
Agreed.
Because more people join in. And I think, we need more people like you to actually, to think about the climate and so forth. Otherwise,
Agreed.
it's not a good deal if you start canceling the accord that we that we did.
No, it would be really not good. Let's not do that. Yeah.
Let's not do that. All right. Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful conversation, man. It was.
Yeah, thanks, man. This has been fun.